Hi everyone and welcome to my channel Karoline's Knits. My name is Karoline and I am here with my puppy Fela. Fela is currently in her first season, or like her first, lots of people don't know what in season mean. It means she's in heat, and I haven't filmed down here for a long time because what is happening is exactly what I thought would happen, which is Fela is really upset she can't live outside while I'm talking. So I'll give it 5 minutes and then see and maybe let her outside. So as I said, my name is Karoline and I live in Scotland with my partner Ben and my, God, how old is she? 10 months old, Labrador Border Collie mix Fela. So she has just had some play, so I'm hoping that she'll settle if I just don't say too much. I should say that I am originally Danish, but this marks my 8th year of living in Scotland. It's actually also the second time that I'm gonna record this episode because last time I set myself up for failure. I filmed when Ben was home, so I felt strangely self-conscious that he was listening in, which I'm sure he didn't, because I wasn't saying anything remotely interesting to listen in on if you ask him. But also I filmed at a time of the day when I was tired. I didn't really feel ready to film. So today there's some things that aren't probably as they should be. You might be able to hear one of them, which is my dishwasher is currently running. We have Fela, who clearly decided not to settle, but I feel much more in the right kind of chatty mood for an episode today. So you have to excuse the background noises, you have to excuse all the construction noises, the joys of living in a new build, all of these things, because when you film podcasts, sometimes you just have to film when you are in the mood and not wait. So that's what I'm doing today. I decided today not to wear my latest finished object, so I'm wearing my cardigan number 7 from My Favourite Things Knitwear. I finished this start of January 2021, and after changing the buttons on it for the 3rd time, I've used this loads. The first buttons I bought were these like heavy, like diamante buttons, and this fabric was way too thin and flowy to sort of hold the weight of them. Then I put shell buttons on them, but they broke because I stepped on them, and now I'm on the 3rd set, which are these like plastic horn style ones from Knitt, and I absolutely love them. Right, Fela, can you be good if I let you outside? I'll give you a quick trip outside. Let's see. With Fela outside, hopefully things will settle down a little bit. Our neighbour has an intact dog, and I've been really watching that they're not out at the same time, and it's really hard for Fela because she loves to live in the garden. Anyway, this cardigan number 7 actually hasn't, like, it didn't get used loads for the first few months, but after I changed the buttons I've used it so much. It's not really that special a construction. It has massive balloon sleeves, and I probably knit a size bigger than I would knit now, so I think this is a 2XL. And in actuality, even then I should probably have knit an XL, so I'm probably a little bit smaller than when I first made it. But it's just such a practical garment. It has pilled a little bit. I have depilled it a bit, but it could probably use some more, but considering it's quite a soft flowy yarn, I'm not too upset about it. But it just goes with everything. I love to wear it at home. I often wear it with like jogging bottoms and a cozy t-shirt for just lounging on the sofa, but equally I've also gotten loads of use out of it on top of dresses for going out. It's nice enough that I can wear to work, etc. So this garment was actually one that has really proven to me that I would quite like to make more cardigans in the future. So yeah, it felt like quite a natural garment to wear today. So I'm going to show you my first and biggest finished garment. As usual, I always have quite a detailed description box. So if there's anything that you're curious about and that you want to see more of, chances are it's linked down below. So my first finished object is this. Now I'm wondering if I should have hung it. Maybe it's going out of shape a little bit. I might fold it. But this is the office tee from Knit Flitter. I will pop in what is it called, like shots of it on so you can see me model it. I should also say for full transparency that I did have the yarn sponsored for this by the Danish yarn dyer Sysleriget. So I've knitted this in 100% pure silk, in their 100% pure silk in the colour Fluff. which is this quite variegated pink with a few hints of very light purple through it. An absolutely stunning colour. I absolutely loved it as soon as I saw it knitted up. It's just the right level of like girly but beautiful. I was very lucky to receive 5 skeins, so 500 grams of the pure silk, and I've used less than 250 grams for my tee, which is in the size A, B, C, D, E, F. Yeah, so it's a size E, which I guess in normal sizing would be about an XL, and I think on me it has like a perfectly not too fitted but also not too oversized look, exactly like I wanted it. I did knit mine a little bit too short, and had I known I would probably have knit it a bit longer, but it looks really nice with skirts and stuff, so I think I'm just gonna have to style it with that in mind. I've already been thinking about making another one because I really like the shoulder fit. The construction of the shoulder is this, like, you start off with essentially an ever so slight saddle shoulder that then moves into like quite a steep raglan, and it just creates that tight over the shoulder and then a slightly looser fit going down, which I really enjoy. So I've been thinking about making one in some superwash, hand-dyed superwash merino that I have in my stash that I just haven't decided what it could be good for. It's variegated enough that I don't actually think it would go that well with my hair, so I'm thinking that might become another tee. And all in all, now that it's done, I absolutely love it. If you've been following for a while, this has been a Mount Everest for me. The gauge is quite tight. It was knitted on quite tight needles. I actually knitted this on wooden needles, but I think I'm just coming to realise that I am at heart not a wooden needle girl. I much prefer knitting with metal. So I think if I was to knit it again, I'd definitely knit it on metal. I also found that for tension, to really make it smooth enough to knit on, so usually I knit continental style, so I have the yarn around my left pointer finger. I found when it was wrapped just once around my left pointer finger, I couldn't hold the tension right on the yarn, and it actually slowed me down quite a lot. But I found when I then gave it just one wrap around the little finger and around my pointer finger, that it became much easier. I think going forward with these kind of tighter gauges or like thinner yarn on small needles, I think that's the way to go for me. It was just much more comfortable. So first finished object. My second finished objects, speaking of tiny gauges, are these lovely socks that I have not worn yet, even though they've been finished for quite a long time. As soon as I finished the tee, I had finished one sock already, and as soon as I finished the tee, I basically speed knitted the second one. These are the Soulmate socks, which is a pattern from Woolyknit, and I've knit it in their sock base, which is a 90% wool and a 10% nylon. It is quite a woolly yarn, but it's definitely soft enough with wearing, and I think it'll be wonderful to wear. It turns out that this pattern was actually designed by Meg from No Frills Knitting, which I thought was quite sweet. And it basically has these mock cables going down the front, which are really easy to knit. Essentially, it's a 4-row repeat, and is essentially just requires you to be able to slip stitches. So definitely something that most people can do. Because it is quite a simple pattern, it's also one based on the fact it's lace that you can pick up if you mess it up, which I have done a few times, and it is something you can fix with a crochet hook, something that's quite important to me. I knitted these on 2.25mm Tiago needles, and yes, I love Tiago needles. I am a definite convert. It was amazing to knit these on those. I just basically decided to size down half a size to keep it a bit tighter. Last time I had loads of helpful comments about sock blockers, and lots of people said it's not necessary, but for these I really wanted the lace to kind of bloom and to be stretched a little bit. And also because I had sized down with no gauge swatch, I think my gauge was a little bit too tight. So yeah, I am actually gonna get to wear them now. But in total, like in general, they were quite an easy knit. I think this heel is called a short row heel. I found that quite easy to work, and it has an asymmetrical, like anatomical toe, I think it's called. So I'm excited to see how that wears. But yeah, and finally it's in a design the colour mink, which last time I checked they didn't have mink in stock, but it's this kind of beigey, taupey, pinkish like colour, quite nice and neutral actually, and I have loads left. So those two are my finished objects. Right, Fela has now chomped on her treat that I had to bribe her with because she went out she was obviously out in the garden, and she absolutely loves attention, and the neighbour was out, I think, hanging up laundry or something, and Fela was like, oh yes, I'll take attention because I don't get any. So I gave her a treat to come back in, and now she's had that, chomped it, no one had to listen to the chomps. I'm quite funny about chewing noises, so I'm not going to put you through that. Anyway, so that's the finished object section done for today. I thought I'd show you my whips. So I'm going to start with one that will not be seeing very much attention, and I'll quite quickly talk through it. So the first whip that I am currently working on. Right, dog has finished drinking. My first whip is this. Now, I recently asked for like short video ideas. So one of them was sort of part of that kind of extra series that I'd filmed last week about my hair and alternatives. And quite a lot of people asked to see, so lots of people asked for me to make like a project start to finish, and this is actually one that I have been filming clips to do that. So I'll talk more about the sort of details of it in that, and it's going to have to lie, just wait for a little bit till I'm ready to give my attention to it again. This is the Hvid cardigan by Aftenstrik. So this is, as I said, I apologise for all the breaks. I'm hoping she'll just calm down. I should have known that at the moment it just feels like the stars won't align when it comes to filming. But yes, this is the Aftenstrik's Hvid cardigan, and we just got a massive crow attack in the gardens. I cannot believe it. What the hell? But yeah, it's a cable cardigan. I'm knitting this in Midnatssol from CamaRose and Sandnes per Gynt. The per Gynt I was gifted from Simona last year around this time, so it's been in my stash a while. CamaRose is a yarn that I spoke about in the My Hair video, so I'll link that down below and you can learn more about it there. And then that's my dishwasher about to finish. That's nice. So the per Gynt is 100% Norwegian wool, and I've heard it's like one of those like workhorse wool that whether you knit in it just lasts forever. So quite excited to see what it'll be like when it's all finished. And I'm knitting it basically in what you can call natural white colours, which sounded like a really great idea, but Fela is shedding just now, and for some, well, Fela sheds all year round, but for some reason Fela's hair just really sticks to this yarn combo. So essentially it'll be natural white with little specks of Fela's black hairs in it. But this is going to just have to lie and wait for a little while, because there's still, as you can tell, quite a long way to go. So that's the first one. My second whip, so this is my like easy peasy, just quickly knit on when I have the chance kind of whip, and I haven't done very much. So I'm almost done with the colour that is going to be a roll neck. This is the Karoline sweater from Knitting for Olive, and I'm knitting it in one strand of Filcolana Anina and one strand of Fibers Bates Cumulus. So Anina is 100% superwash merino, and Cumulus is a 74% baby seal alpaca and 26 mulberry silk. This is a slightly thicker version than normal my hair, but at least for me, as long as you get swatch, usually despite it being slightly thicker, it's fine. It is quite and I had other people comment that too, that she used this kind of fibre. It's quite a dominating second strand, so whatever colour you hold it with will mainly be the colour of the cereal alpaca, which I am absolutely fine with, but it's worth sort of keeping in mind. So this colour took me a long time, and it's been fine. I've knitted on it sort of during meetings when I've had, like, you know, basically doing meetings, doing knit nights, that type of thing. And the Karoline sweater from Knitting for Olive is like a saddle shoulder construction, so it's just going to be a soft comfy sweater that I'm knitting because I think it'll go with most of my wardrobe. And at first I was wondering, because it's quite dark yarn, I was like, oh, maybe I should actually knit something I could wear like shirts and stuff underneath. But I actually think it would be nicer just to have a nice cozy roll neck, especially because, well, I would probably no longer buy superwash merino to like for myself. I do have it in my stash, so I'm going to knit it up. And Anina is incredibly soft. It's a true superwash yarn in that it's like incredibly soft and squishy, and I would use it for children's knits. Now we're moving on to probably the most exciting segment, I personally think. So how to even tell this story. There's a designer that I have respected for a really, really long time, and I still remember the night she sent me a message to say, I really like your profile and your knits, would you be up for test knitting for me one day? And you better believe that I wrote back immediately and said yes. And then life sort of happened. I think it's because I got failure and I kind of went missing in action for a few months and all of these things. And then she asked me earlier, like at the start of 2022, when I was test knitting the tee, and luckily I was smart enough to know that I did not have the capacity to finish the tee and knit on something quite big at the same time, like another sweater. So finally the stars aligned, and this is like the one test knit I just knew I could never say no to. So I'm really fortunate to currently be test knitting for my favourite things knitwear. I'm test knitting sweater number 20, and I've definitely made a little bit more progress than the last time I filmed. So I finished the upper back piece. So sweater number 20 is going to be this like oversized boxy fit all over cabled sweater with 2x2 ribbing and a v-neck. So I finished the back piece, which was like the first big piece to finish. And I'm now working on the first front piece. So I picked up stitches for that yesterday, and that's shaping up quite nice. For full transparency, I should say that the yarn was gifted for this particular test knit, and I'm knitting in one strand of, there we are, one strand I'm knitting for Olive's Heavy Merino, and one strand I'm knitting for Olive's Soft Silk Mohair in the colour, this is in the colour Putty, and the Heavy Merino is in the colour Nordic Beach or Norstrand. And it's this kind of lightish combo, which together makes it's also currently in that stage. It looked really good when I was just working on the back piece, but once you start picking up for the front and stuff, it starts to look a bit strange, like, you know, because like the edges start to roll and it's like heavy and there's all of these like strands you have to weave in. So it's probably not in the prettiest state just now. But yeah, I think the colour combination creates this like very neutral, cool beige, which is exactly what I wanted, because as a blonde, I think too warm toned actually doesn't suit my hair as much. You might be able to compare it, like even if I hold something like this up, it looks nice, this kind of yellowish natural colour, but I personally think that this kind of very neutral, cool beige colour suits me much better. I'm also very fortunate that my knit group definitely helped me pick it and sort of pushed me to the side on the colour. Yeah, I'm really impressed with Heavy Merino to start, so far. I've heard that it can be scratchy. Now, this particular colour smells sheepy. It smells like a lot of the Woolyknit stuff I have. And so I wonder if Nordic Beach is actually sort of untreated wool. Simply because it's that kind of neutral colour, it could easily be spun from actual, like, you know, natural wools and not really have had much to done to it. I should also say that the Heavy Merino and the Merino in Nordic Beach looks like quite different colours. This is almost what Folklana would call melange on their yarns, which is that it's not just a single tone. It's not proper like variegated, but it's also not completely flat. And yeah, so far really lovely combo. I obviously love knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair. Now I've had quite a few questions about how I ended up on how I became a test knitter for my favourite things knitwear, and in general how you get sponsorship for yarn. And I will probably make a longer video about it one day, but I should say some quite important things, because I think it's easy to forget that first of all I am a native Danish speaker, and most of the patterns I knit from are actually Danish patterns, and so my knitting Danish is very good. I think for people like My Favourite Things Knitwear and many of the other, like Nina from Knitflitter and other designers who have had sponsored yarn in the past, most of them have actually test knitted in Danish. And so it seems that the Danish market, and this is sort of how do you get sponsored yarn, it seems that in sort of the Danish knitting market and in pattern designing, the Danish yarn brand, so Knitting for Olive is a Danish yarn brand, Sysleriget is Danish, I see other brands commonly sponsoring, so I know that Langyarns I don't think is Danish, but it definitely has a big, you know, Danish branch to it. Phil Kalana, obviously, a lot of these brands, they are Danish or close to, and my understanding is that they see sponsoring test knits as obviously a form of marketing, right? Because you see their yarns knit up in modern patterns, etc. They get recommended, all of these things. What that does mean is that it's quite common for Danish test knitters to have sponsored yarn. However, speaking to my English-speaking knitting designer friends, like Sophie from the Knit Pearl Girl, who finally released her mohair video, so I'll link that down below, that was really good. Or my friend, you know, both Lissy from Hvid or Laura from Penrose Knits, etc, etc. It just does not sound like it's a thing that is as big over here. Some brands might offer sponsored yarn for the designer itself, but having fully sponsored test knits just does not seem to be the case. Obviously my friend Simona from Knit has sometimes given discount codes for some of the tests, and I think that's becoming more common, but fully sponsored is just not that common. I don't know why. I think it's a missed opportunity for the yarn brands, because it's a brilliant way to get all their yarns out, get them, you know, knit it up and all of these things, but I don't know how the sort of technicality works. So the basic answer is, unless you're Danish or at least can knit from Danish patterns, it might be quite hard to find sponsored test knits, and it might also be hard to get on the sponsored or get on the testing list in general for many of the Danish designers, because I think they start out by testing their patterns in Danish and then they get them translated. The exception to that is, I know Augustine's no longer looks for test knitters because she's been very busy, but back when she did, she offered English speaking test knits as well as Danish, so I guess she translated her patterns herself, or at least had them translated in the testing phase. And over a year ago, I saw Knitting for Olive said, we've had a pattern translated, we're looking for one person to knit it up to make sure the translation makes sense. But that's probably about it. And that's why I know it can be really frustrating maybe, or it's easy to feel like, what does, you know, what do I, Karoline, have as a knitter that other people don't? And I guess the basic answer is a different mother tongue. Yeah, sometimes I do feel a bit bad, because I think lots of people would like to experience it, and there's lots of great things to sponsored yarn. But as I've spoken about before, it's also worth keeping in mind that often, so definitely not the case when I test knit for Nina, but for many designers, the turnaround when they have sponsored test knits, often is because they are quite large designers, is that they can have fairly short test windows. So for example, for sweater number 20, I'll have about 4 weeks to knit an all over cabled sweater in quite an oversized fit. So basically I will be knitting on this sweater and this sweater only for quite a long time. And sometimes that's nice, and sometimes that can also be a bit stressful, I think. So basically, if it hadn't been this exact sweater, because I'm obsessed with cables, and if it hadn't been My Favourite Things Knitwear, I would actually probably have said no, even if there was free yarn. So far I've found knitting the cables, like knitting the sweater itself, surprisingly fast. So I'm just gonna have a sip of tea. So far I've actually found it much faster than I thought I would find it. So this is, I started this a week today, and in that time I finished this whole back piece and obviously done this much on the front. It knits up quite fast. I'm knitting this on 5mm needles because I was slightly over gauge on 5.5, which is what's recommended in the pattern, but the yarn is quite thick, so it does knit up quite quickly, which is really good. But it doesn't feel heavy as of yet. Obviously it will be a heavy garment, like cables, they are just like thick, it just is squishy. Something I didn't know about cables before I started knitting cables myself is that Cables are essentially just created by holding some stitches in front or back while you knit other stitches. So what that essentially means is that it's actually not difficult to knit cables. I think sometimes it can be a bit hard to knit them very even. I know Suzanne Bryan, who makes brilliant tutorials, have recently had quite a focus on cables, so I'd definitely take a look at some of her videos if you're about to knit cables. But yeah, it's been really interesting to sort of hear her tips so that you don't get like loose stitches in the cables themselves. But in general, it's quite easy, and if you catch a mistake, I definitely had a mistake that I then messed up because I dropped the stitches to pick them up, and then I messed up whether they're going to the front or back, so one of the cables looks a little bit dodgy, so let's just not hold that side out. But in general, as long as you hold it to the right front or back, it's actually quite easy to pick up missed cables, especially on the front piece. For whatever reason, we had a friend over yesterday and I was knitting on this while watching F1, and I think the combination of watching something and chatting just meant that I kept missing this little cable. And it's quite easy because you can just essentially have 2 cable needles. I pick up the stitches for the cables, let them drop down, switch them around, and then you just pick up the stitches completely normal. So I would say cables are maybe not like first project easy, but it's definitely something, even a sweater like this, that even fairly new knitters are able to do because you can fix mistakes. Something I've learned the hard way is that often what can hold you back from knitting a pattern is how can you fix it if it goes wrong, and I think that's what put people off these kind of structured and patterned knits. So yeah, I think it's knitting up quite fast. My goal is to finish the 2 front pieces by the middle of this week, get the body joined in the round, and see if I can't knit through most of the body by the end of this week. That's sort of the deadline I've set myself, because I only have 4 weeks, and it's obviously with like big sleeves as well that I again follow cable pattern on it, so it will be quite a lot. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. Just love the cables. I spend so much time just looking at it. It's absolutely stunning. I should also say, I know my friend Emilia from Strike by Eat, she's a Danish podcaster, has been speaking about how much she's found the knitting for Olive might had to shed, and I will say that this lighter colour in Kit or Potty seems to be a bit worse than others. So like, having had it on my lap, I can see this fluff on it, but it's not horrific, I don't think, and it's turning out really soft. So that's my sort of main whip, and I probably will not be back until it's basically done, because it will be all the progress I'll be making. The black sweater, or the very dark grey sweater, will be my easier knit if I ever need that, so for knit night, etc. But other than that, that's all I plan to knit, because the turnaround is quite short. So the final section is acquisitions, and I've gathered quite a few actually. I should say that I am still really truly committing to not buying any more yarn or any more sort of yarny bits. We're hitting, I'm getting married in July. We are on our 3rd date. And so we are in the sort of like final hardcore saving phase before the wedding. And so naturally my yarn budget is just going to be really limited the next few months. And I'm not going to need any more yarn anyway, so I'm just going to stick to it. Last time, so this is probably the craziest thing that has ever happened to me in my whole time on YouTube. So you remember last time I spoke about using the fixed circular Tiago Needles to knit these socks, and that I was really enjoying it, and I was asking about people's recommendations for buying the set. If you are thinking about buying the Tiago set, I would definitely recommend checking out the comment section on the previous video, because people left really long and thoughtful comments about what size they would buy, why they would buy a certain size, where they would buy it from, all of these things. And the consensus seemed to be that no matter the size of the set people bought, everyone loved it. Lots of people really enjoyed the 4-inch needles and didn't find that to be a problem for knitting in general. And some did say that the bigger sizes in the complete set wasn't something they used enough to make it worth the cost. But then other people said that they bought the small set first, which I think goes up to, starts at 275mm needles and then goes up to 5mm needles. And they found that over time they actually needed more needles from the bigger set. and that it would have worked out cheaper to just buy the bigger set from the start. I did have a single person say that they'd bought the needles and regretted buying them, which I think is a massive testament to how much these needles are loved. So a lovely lady contacted me on Instagram. She's called Meg. Meg wrote to me to say, I have the 4-inch and the 5-inch set of Tiago Needles, and I don't use the 5-inch anymore. I much prefer the 4-inch, so basically the 5-inch set is just collecting dust. I am based in the States, but I'm happy to send the needles to you if you're willing to cover shipping. And the complete 5-inch set to you, basically. You have to buy cables. Fela, enough. You're not going outside. You're not going outside. And I wrote back I wrote back as soon as I saw it, and I was like, that's incredibly, kind of you, but you can definitely sell the set for money. It's almost too big a present to accept, but she insisted, and in the end said that she would rather I donated the money for the shipping to a worthy cause, probably something to do with the war in Ukraine. So that's the plan. I'm still waiting for cables, but I have ordered cables. I actually found a fairly local shop to me in Kirkentollich that sells Tiago Needles, and so I ordered my cables from there. She didn't have that many in stock, but as I said, we are in the hardcore saving phase, so I can always buy more cables with time. So here's my 5-inch Tiago needle set that has come all the way from the States. It is the complete set, so if I could zip this open. So here they are. So it goes from a US 2 to a US 15, with lots of sizes in between. So for anyone using metric ones, it goes from 2.75mm needles all the way to a 10mm needle, which is quite a big one, isn't it? It is basically of all the common sizes that I would use in Europe. It's only missing a 3mm needle. So when I ordered the cables, I ordered a 3mm needle because it's missing that. It's also missing a 7mm needle, but I'm not too worried about that because there's a 6.5 and an 8. But yeah, I just could not believe it. I just think it's so wonderfully kind to offer, because probably would not have been in my budget to buy these needles that fast. But here they are. I'm really excited to use them, and I'm probably going to commit a bit of a sin because I do plan on knitting the rest of sweater number 20 on them once the cables arrive. Just because I'm currently knitting, let's see, I'll find the same size so that it's a fair comparison. I'm currently using my Knit Pro Sings, and I don't know if you can tell, but the big difference between them is just the Tiago just has a slightly better taper to it. You won't be able to see that at all, I don't think. So I think it'll be quicker knitting on these. Yeah, I'm just so excited. So thank you so much, Meg. I didn't really expect the internet to be this kind. And yeah, I just really appreciate all of you that are watching. So that's my first acquisition. I do have a bit of yarn, and I'll maybe go through the yarn a little bit quicker. So the first thing, I'm sure I feel like all podcasters have been like, oh, as you might know, Knitting for Olive had a Saturday where they donated all their sales to the Red Cross to support them in the humanitarian relief in the war in Ukraine. There you go. That's what I was trying to say. And of course, I had to buy something. I'm just watching because there's someone out there with a cocker who is always obsessed with Fela. I don't know if it's a cocker, it's some kind of spaniel. Is always obsessed with Fela, and Fela is obviously obsessed with it too. So now the dog is not willing to move because it's watching Fela and Fela's watching it. So when they donated their money, I bought a few patterns, and I also bought this, which is the Knitting for Olive Soft Silk My Hair in the colour Rust. and I bought that to hold with this. So this is the Woolyknit hank in the colour cinnamon, which is just stunning. So I bought enough to basically cover all the yardage of this, which is about 900 meters, I think. Yeah, I bought the colour rust to hold with it. So I'm probably planning, and funnily enough, I just sold that Emilia from Strike By You started one as well. I'm planning to knit a September sweater, and actually that had been my next planned cast on after I finished all of this, if I hadn't accepted the test knit for my favourite things knitwear, just because I don't own a slip over. Did I say the September sweater? I meant the September slip over, which is like a brioche stitch slip over. So that's my plan cast on once all of this is done, because I think it'll be really good as we go into a slightly warmer season. So that's one of them. Right, Fela Bela? Well, I thought I brought it down, but clearly didn't. Basically, I had to supplement some of the Blueface Leicester that I bought from Woolyknit a few weeks ago, or not a few weeks ago, that I bought till end of 2021, I think. Obviously the lovely Rebecca from the Caribbean had the sort of like knit along running with them and a discount code. So I bought one cone just because I was like, if I'm placing an order anyway, with a discount code at the time, this was only £14, which for something that I could use to make a DK weight sweater, I thought was quite good. So this is in the colour burgundy in a 100% British wool cone. What do you think, Fela? Does it smell nice? So that was my first purchase to show, together with 5 more balls of the Blueface Leicester, which my friend Sophie is currently knitting the Sealer slip over from Petite Knitting, and the Blueface Leicester is just lush. I really enjoy it. Another order that I have placed, if you've been following me for a while, you may know that I loved the hand dyer Sakami. I found Sakami like autumn 2020 on Etsy, and I just love their colours. They're like, many of them are quite neutral, and so they're hand dyed, but they're still like not too bright and variegated. That's useful, Fela. So I bought some yarn from them. So they had like, basically at the moment they're running, they have like some kind of base that's in a special spotlight that you get like a discount on. So at the time it was the baby alpaca, 70% baby alpaca, 20% silk and 10% cashmere base. So I bought 2 hanks of the lace weight one in the colour Hvid. And I plan to hold that with a yarn that I still haven't found just the right project for. So this is the Lana Gatto Maxi VIP, which used to be sold by my lovely friend Simona, but she no longer sells it. And that's I think it's an 80% merino, 20% cashmere blend. Yeah, and it's, so these two will just make the softer sweater. The Maxi VIP supposedly is as thick as like a DK weight or light worsted. I don't think it is. What kind of recommended gauge are they saying? Oh yeah, they are saying 24 stitches, or 29 stitches. So they are saying it's quite thin. I have, in another colour of Maxi VIP, I've knitted up, I made 2 sweaters, and one of them actually ended up with quite a good gauge. And so it's basically quite a light yarn weight. So I'm going to see one of them. I knit up the Wednesday sweater in this hold with a cereal alpaca, which I think the gauge is a little bit too loose for. But I knitted another one in a white Maxi VIP, the Dolce sweater from Divine Knitwear, and I actually, from memory, quite like the gauge on that. So I might check what that is so that I could hit that sort of gauge, especially now that I have the lace weight to just beef it up a little bit. So that's something in my future. I'm obviously going to do a gauge swatch, because in real life the Maxi VIP is somewhat lighter, so I'm going to see how it looks knit up, because the baby alpaca doesn't have fluff really, so it isn't going to, like, it's not like when you like have a slightly mismatched combo like I have for the sweater number 20, but then my hair kind of, it doesn't matter as much. So I'm going to have to see what that looks like. And then my final acquisition, when I was placing my order, I'm obviously obsessed with socks at the moment, and I know Sakami is they're trying to offer a lot more non-superwash bases, and I'm really keen to try some non-superwash all natural fibre sock bases as well. And so I wrote to her and asked what she kind of would recommend, and one of her bases is the 75% Blue Face Leicester and 25% Mid Brown Masham, which I'm led to believe the Masham is also, so Blue Face Leicester is obviously a native British breed, and then the Masham is also a native British breed. I will say, as I said, I have the 100% Blue Face Leicester from Woolyknit. I don't think it's too dissimilar in softness from, for example, when you feel the heavy merino and the Blue Face Leicester. To me, they feel like quite similar fibres. So yeah, I really like the feeling of Blue Face Leicester, and I would knit with Blue Face Leicester, like I'd pick Blue Face Leicester again. So anyway, I picked this, just one hank, because basically I'm trying to avoid the thing that I often do, which is I'm like, oh, I'm a sock knitter now, and then I buy, you know, 10, oh, do you see that? My dishwasher, when it's done, it will like open itself. Has like a little robot arm that like pushes itself open. Quite fancy. So anyway, I picked this, which is in the colour Assyria, which is just lovely. Yeah, it's just like rusty brown. So this is DK weight. And so if you have any ideas of a sock pattern I should knit in this, let me know. I do have 100 gram. I find it seems that I have fairly small feet, so for 100 gram I should definitely get like a full leg length sock out of it. But yeah, any recommendations for a pattern, let me know. And that's all the yarny goodness for today. If you want to scoot off because you're not interested in the personal bit, then now is the time. But other than that, I thought I'd just give a little update on life here. Yeah, a little update on life here. As I said, Fela went into her first season or her heat, not this weekend, but the weekend before. So she's currently on day 10-ish. And they say it can last about 3 weeks in total. So we're not too far away from the midway point. It's something we've been waiting for, because after about 6 months, essentially, you can expect them to go into heat. And so we've been waiting for it, but because in agreement with Fela's vet, we agreed to spay after her first season. In case you, lots of people were really confused, so I don't think I mentioned it well enough on social media, but they are essentially fertile through the whole thing. So in general, they recommend that you keep an extra good eye on your dog. So at first they bleed, and they are fertile when they bleed, in contrast to humans who mainly are not. And they can, the amount they bleed can differ quite a lot. I would say Fela has done a lot to keep herself clean, but we have definitely noticed some blood, and there are some things to clean when the heat is over. But they also, you know, recommend that, especially now that we're moving hopefully away from the bleeding phase into the second phase, they hit a point where they'll start looking for love, they call it. So essentially the desire within them to breed is so strong that they will start, like, they will try to find mate, you know, an opportunity to mate. So that's when they will like escape from your garden and run away and all of these things. So the advice is that you can walk them, but you should walk them on lead so that they don't take off, and also that you should walk at quiet times. We live in the type of place where lots of people walk their dogs off lead. It seems here that it's not a privilege, that's it's just oh, it's easier to walk my dog off lead. So there's lots of intact dogs here walked off lead, even around traffic. And up in the woods, I don't, you know, we live quite close, like we live with like farmland around us, and this used to be farmland where my house was built. And so we have lots of sheep and cows in the fields surrounding us, and there's big forest and all of these things, and it's really lovely. And I don't mind too much up there that people walk their dogs off lead, but I do find here in the state where we live, so in Britain, it's quite common that new builds are, you know, like contained within themselves. Like a builder will, you know, essentially buy a few fields and build houses on them. And I find around here, I do think it's a bit dangerous sometimes to walk your dog off lead. So I've been a bit nervous about taking her out. So she's been out once since her heat, well, out on a walk since her heat started just to limit the aggro, because some of the dogs here are quite big, and I just don't want to. And apparently also just as, you know, if I walked her around the estate, she would obviously leave her scent, and that can affect other dogs quite a lot. So also just purely from being a nice owner, I've decided just to keep her home. Also because she is getting spayed, I was sort of keen to see how much trouble it would be if she couldn't leave the house, right? Where Fela is a Labrador Border Collie mix from a farm, and so she's naturally, like, genetically quite an energetic dog. Day to day we don't have any destructiveness. She's not been destructive since she first started going on walks. She's extremely trustworthy around the house, around food, around socks, and all of these other things that dogs can sometimes be a bit bad around. And so, you know, and I think a lot of that is due to the fact that she is walked a fair bit, mainly on long sniffy walks before the 5 minutes a month police comes for me. But she does get a lot of time outside and on walks, and we have a dog walker that comes and takes her and all of this. So I was quite nervous of what she would be like if she didn't have that, and actually she's been absolutely brilliant, adapting to not going out. So we've been, Fela has, essentially there's a company called Do More With Your Dog, and they offer something called trick titles. And if you have a dog and you want something to like train with a purpose, which I think is always good, I definitely recommend looking into trick titles. So when Fela was a very small pup, before she could really go on walks, we did have a lot of issues with her being bored quite quickly. So she actually got her novice trick title at 17 weeks. And we've now been working towards getting the intermediate and advanced together with the novice masters, and I've kind of used that as a way to have something to do during the week to keep her entertained. And we've been playing lots of frisbee in the garden. My garden isn't very big, so it's much easier to do the sort of like a frisbee, because it doesn't flow as long. So yeah, that's what we've been doing lots of, and she's just been adjusting so incredibly well to it, and it makes me a lot less nervous about the spay. I thought it would be good to have experience of keeping her entertained without walks. So that's been taking up a lot of my headspace. We've had lovely spring weather. We're finally fixing things in the garden. This is obviously a new shot of my house. If you want to see more of my house, I have shown around my house in Vlogmas actually, so you can see a bit more of the house there. And obviously the final big thing is that we are going into the sort of final planning phase for the wedding. So we're due to get married July 24th this year, which is really exciting. Been a long time underway. We got engaged December 2018, so we've been engaged for 3.5 years, and I definitely think that some of the excitement has really gone off the planning by having to postpone the wedding so many times. But it's obviously been for a good reason. My family obviously lives in Denmark, and I think we've had to postpone more than maybe some other couples did, because we did need international travel really. It would feel completely wrong to get married without my family. The biggest issue that I'm facing is that I bought my wedding dress a year before our original date. So I bought that in 2019, and 3 years is a long time. So I'm currently having to, like, I tried it on recently, and it's just the dress for me. It's funny, I think lots of brides pick dresses based on how they fit up top, and for me it was the bottom half of my dress that absolutely sold me. So if you watched all this way, I'd love to hear what kind of dress you think I've picked. I asked that on Instagram the other day, and the biggest guess was lace. I always get lace, lots of people think I've picked like a very lacy number. I will of course show it once the wedding is all over. I've honestly, in real life, I've probably shown it to more people than we have guessed. So it's not a particularly good, well-kept secret. But yeah, I'm not going to pop it up here because I have managed to keep it a secret from Ben. But I tried it on, and I am missing just a few inches from the sort of lockdown weight gain to fit into it. So I'm just going to have to tighten my belt a little bit for the next few months. But I also think it's good because I feel like for the first time in many years. So I feel like most of COVID I spent feeling really depressed and really struggling, and this is probably the first time I've started to truly feel like myself pre-pandemic, and it's been amazing. It's like a cloud, it's like lifting, and that has done so much good for me. And it's something I think I've spoken about many a times. If you've been watching for a long time, I speak quite openly about mental health, and I just think it really, yeah, it's really nice to start to feel like that coming back. I think some of it is also purely due to the fact that we're finally getting better weather. The sun has been out all weekend, so we've been out in the garden, and I love it. I love looking out into my little little mud pile outside. It's not really too much grass after Fela has gotten her hands on it. And yeah, I've been doing lots more cleaning, and that gives me so much joy when the house is clean and tidy. And I also feel like the first few months of having Fela were brutal. I don't think anyone warned me how tough puppy blues can be, which is essentially like post-puppy depression that you get when you get a little puppy. But now she just adds so much joy to my life. I absolutely thrive being a dog mum, and she's my little shadow, never leaves me out of sight if she can help it. And finally I'm getting that kind of benefit that everyone talks about when they say get a dog, but it has taken a long time. And so I know sometimes people are like, oh yeah, like almost like you're not meant to say it's hard because you're meant to love them unconditionally. And I've definitely hit that point that Fela is just one of my absolute favorite little beings in this whole world. But it has taken a bit of time, especially now that she's much more well behaved. You can tell she finally tucked it out next to me. So yeah, that's what's going on in my life. I hope you're all doing okay. I know it's a really difficult time for lots of people, and it's always that balance between all the atrocities going on in the world while you're having a nice time can feel a bit like a contrast. But I hope this has been a little escape, and please do let me know how you're doing, what you're working on, what your thoughts are. I'm honestly the worst at getting back to messages and comments, and I will always apologise for that, but I really am trying my best to get better. But I promise I do read them, and I do appreciate every single one of them. So I'm gonna close it off for now, and I'll see you next time. Bye.